Hi everyone, my name is Kim and I'm a librarian at the Monroe County Public Library, and today I have for you story time. In today's story time, I'm going to read a book, we're going to do a rhyme, and then I'm going to read another book. But before we get started, I'm going to sing our hello song. And if you remember our hello song, it uses some American Sign Language. It uses the sign for hello, which is just this kind of salute, hello. And it uses a sign for friends. We're going to take our two index fingers and they're going to kind of hug each other. And they're going to kind of hug each other again. They do like a little pull. So we got hello and we got friend. All right, and here's how it goes. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. It's time to say hello. Yay, great. And now we're ready to get started with our story time. And today you're going to notice I have Lammy with me, and I also have my big sheep with me. And they are here because today all of my stories have to do with a topic very familiar to them, and it is yarn. The yarn, like this ball of yarn, is really cool, right? It comes from wool, and wool is what we call that kind of special kind of hair or fur that comes off of a sheep, right? So yarn comes from sheep. And when we have yarn, we can use it to knit. So here's a knitting project that I'm working on. I'm turning this yarn into what will eventually be a scarf. So I've got this project that I'm working on and with my yarn. Okay, and speaking of knitting, today's first story is Knitty Kitty by David Elliot. And here's how it goes. Clickety click, tickety tick, Knitty Kitty sits and knits. And here you can see Knitty Kitty knitting and her little kittens around her feet.
A hat for me, Knitty Kitty?
Yes, little kitten, a hat to keep you cozy. Tickety tick, clickety click, Knitty Kitty sits and knits. And here she is knitting again. The kittens are around her feet. And this one has that little hat on, the hat that she just made.
Mittens for me, Knitty Kitty?
Yes, little kitten, mittens to keep you toasty. And here you can see the little kitten putting on these giant mittens. And the other little kitten, what's he doing? He's heading out the door. Clickety click, lickety split, Knitty Kitty sits and knits. And she's knitting again, another project. What do you think she's knitting this time? Do you think it's another hat or maybe some more mittens? Maybe.
A hat for me, Knitty Kitty? Mittens for me?
There's little kitten is wondering also what Knitty Kitty is making. No, little kitten, a scarf to keep you comfy. But snowmen like to be cozy too, or at least little kittens think so. And here you can see the little kittens have put their hat and their mittens and their scarf on their giant snowman. The winter moon rises and Knitty Kitty rings her bell. It's bedtime for little kittens everywhere. Come along, little kittens. And the little kittens climb into their basket. But the little kittens can't sleep.
We're not cozy.
They mew.
We're not comfy. We're not toasty.
Don't worry, purrs Knitty Kitty. I have something to keep you warm.
What is it, Knitty Kitty?
The kittens cry. Me, comfy, cozy, toasty. Nighty night, little kittens.
Nighty night, Knitty Kitty.
Nighty night, nighty night, night night. And that's Knitty Kitty. I like this book a lot because it's all about these wonderful things that Knitty Kitty is knitting for the kittens, right? And when the kittens use those items, right, they might think about Knitty Kitty and think about the time that she put into them and think about how these items kind of show, right, that she wants to protect them and keep them warm. Another reason I really like this book is because the last time I heard it read, I heard it read by Stephanie, who's our former children's librarian out of the Ellisville branch. And she retired earlier this year, but before she did, I heard her read this story. And so now when I hear this story, or when I read this story, I think about her. And I think that's a really awesome, kind of powerful thing that stories can do, right? They can connect us to other people. And this is one that definitely connects me in my mind and in my heart to Miss Stephanie. All right, so that's Knitty Kitty. All right, and the next thing I have for you is a rhyme. And I'm excited to share this rhyme because it's a variation on the classic rhyme, the Baa Baa Black Sheep rhyme. And it's really fun. It's a fun little twist. And I'm using my felt board today to help me tell this story. So I've got my black sheep here, and it says, Baa Baa Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Baa Baa White Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Baa Baa Naked Sheep, have you any wool? No, sir, I'm frozen through and through. Baa Baa Frozen Sheep, what shall we do? Let's knit a sweater just for you. Oops, I lost my little white sheep, but here you can see my 3 little sheep and my little naked sheep now wearing a cozy sweater. All right. That brings us to our last story, and this is one of my favorites. It's called Extra Yarn, and it's by Barnett, and it's illustrated by John Klassen. And here's Extra Yarn. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box of yarn filled with every color. So she went home and she knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she still had extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too, but there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed at them. Here's Nate. Pointed at them and he laughed.
You two look ridiculous. You're just jealous,
said Annabelle.
No, I'm not,
said Nate. But it turned out he was. And after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. Here's Nate in his little sweater. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. Quiet, shouted Mr. Norman. Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you. Then I'll knit one for everyone, said Annabelle, so they won't have to turn around. Impossible, said Mr. Norman. You can't. But it turned out she could, and she did. Here's all of her classmates. Even for Mr. Norman. And when Annabelle was done, she still had extra yarn. I love this picture where Annabelle's looking in her box and the smile on her face is just so content. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and for Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and even little Louis. And I love that Louis's sweater has an L right in the middle for Louis. She made sweaters for everyone, except for Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and would stand in the snow, with snow knee deep in snow. No sweater for me, thanks, said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And then Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she made sweaters for the dogs and all the cats and all the other animals too. Soon, people thought, soon Annabelle would run out of yarn. Here's a picture of all the different animals she's knitting sweaters for. I love this big bear next to this tiny little rabbit. And there's a dog and some cats. And then on this page, there's a little bird that's even wearing a sweater. So Annabelle did not run out of yarn. And she started making sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. So here we have a mailbox and the birdhouse and even this whole house covered in a sweater. Things began to change in that little town. Look at how colorful this picture is. So many beautiful, colorful houses. It's an amazing contrast to this picture at the beginning of the book, of the town at the beginning of the book. Right? So many dark houses. So many beautiful colored houses. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day an archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10 million, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. I love this picture of the archduke when I look at his big feather and his long scarf. It's so over the top, so dramatic. Really love that detail. So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea. There's his little boat there sailing across the sea back to his castle. The archduke put on his favorite song and he sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted the lid and he looked inside. And what do you think he saw? The box was empty. His mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The archduke hurled the box out the window and he shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But here we can see the box floating across the sea. Annabelle finds it. It turns out she was. And here, this lovely picture of Annabelle sitting in her fully knit tree with Mars at the other end. And the tree branch is so long it extends to the next page where all the other animals are sitting. And that's the end of Extra Yarn. I love this book so much. For me, it just captures so much imagination and so much fun. And I love that kind of little twist of that magical, never-ending box of yarn. So the box of yarn was a really great thing for Annabelle to find. Obviously, right, she loves to knit. And it makes me think every time I read this, if there was something in my life that I had this never-ending supply of, what would that be? Right? What would be that thing I would never want to run out of? And what could I do with it? It's such a fun thing to think about. Is there something in your life you would want to never run out of? You have an endless supply of it? Yeah, there might be something really cool, right? It's a really fun thing to think about and a really fun thing to talk about. All right, and that was Extra Yarn. I hope that you enjoyed that story and the other story and rhyme that I shared today. And now, I'm sorry to say, it is time to say goodbye. And we're going to do our special goodbye song. And we're again going to use American Sign Language. We're going to use the sign for goodbye, just waving goodbye. And we're going to use the sign for friend, or taking those index fingers and hugging, right? And our song goes just like this. Goodbye, friend. Goodbye, friend. Goodbye, friend. It's time to say goodbye. Bye, y'all. Thanks so much again for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.